Hi everyone, my name is Nicholas from the Alternative RPG Club, and this is my second video in my Learn to Play series for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. In this series, I bring players through how to play the game so that when they sign up for our games, they can just jump in and require minimal handholding from me, or they're able to play the game, get the basics out of the way, and I can help them grasp the more complex parts of the game. But I'm not gonna go through all the parts of how to play this game because it's a pretty complex game. What I'm gonna go through is some of the most common things that will come up for you as a character. In all honesty, most of the game is just going to be your standard skill checks, as with most RPGs. The 10% where you are actually in combat is going to be pretty stacked with rules. So I'm going to try and go through most of it. Otherwise, yeah, I think we can begin. I'm just going to turn off my webcam now because it's in the way of the character sheets and stuff like that. Anyway, and subscribe if you've enjoyed my content so far. I've also recorded a previous video on how to create a character, so definitely check that out if you are having trouble with character creation. Okay, so down to how to play this game. I'm gonna go through the character sheet first, and then this cheat sheet here, which I've prepared for a lot of my players. You can find all these resources again in the YouTube descriptions and stuff like that. I'll put a link to the Google Drive where you can access all that stuff. Okay, this is actually a form fillable PDF, which is also in that Google Drive. So it might look a little bit different from what your character sheet looks like, but it covers like the same stuff. First thing you're going to see is your characteristics. So this determines how good you are at your abilities, and it'll govern most of the skill checks in this game. M is movement. Movement depends on what race you are, what species you are. So you'll find that out when you create your character. And I went through that already in the previous video, so do check it out. WS, weapon skill. BS is ballistic skill. So weapon skill is like your one-handed, two-handed arm, axes, etc. Your melee weapons. BS is stuff like guns, bows, arrows, that kind of crossbows, that stuff. Strength is S. Toughness is how tough you are. Generally, the higher this is, the higher your HP is. I is initiative, which is how fast you start in combat. One of the things that initiative does in this game. There are other things as well. I'll explain later. AG is agility, dexterity, intelligence, willpower, and fellowship. So fellowship is like your general charisma. I think the rest of the stats are pretty self-explanatory. If you've played any tabletop RPG, you should know this. Fate, fortune, resilience, and resolve I've also gone through during character creation, but you can definitely check out that video if you need more information, or there is a section here called dice manipulation where you'll find more information about all these stats. So yeah, they are quite important, so do keep these in mind. Okay, psychology, this is where you like key in what happens to your mental state, right? Whether you're frightened, etc., etc. All these have mechanical implications as well. For my players, I'll let you know what they are, but you can also check pages of the rulebook as and when it happens to get a better idea. Alright, next thing is corruption and mutations. So, corruption points are given out when you meet certain things in the game. For example, like mutants, or you commit like mass murder or something like that. Or if you're even in close proximity to a corrupted area where there's like a lot of warpstone, or you see a demon, that kind of thing. So there are multiple things that can give you corruption in this game. Sometimes, even if you save against, most of the time it's a willpower save, but sometimes even when you save against corruption, you still get corruption. You just get like a lesser amount of corruption. The idea here is that if your corruption points ever reach 7 for this character, Siegfrieda, she's gonna have to make a willpower save against getting mutated. And it's not that bad. It's not all bad. Being mutated sometimes can be quite fun, because let's say you get an extra arm, you actually get an extra free attack with that also. Unfortunately, you can't be seen by anyone, or they will hunt you down as a mutant. So there are certain drawbacks, but you know, it's all fun. It's all in good fun of the game, I think. In fact, sometimes I have players telling me, I don't want to pass a save for their mutation check." And I allow that, and I just let them fail that check so they get to see what kind of mutation happens for them. And it's a fun thing that happens. And then you can key in your extra tentacles or what have you details here as well. Pure Soul is actually a talent, so I think what it does is it lets you heighten your limit for corruption. So you would have to take more corruption points before you get corrupted. And I believe if you have X amount of mutations where X is your limit, you are completely lost as a character and you become like an NPC, like an enemy NPC. You completely lost your mind to chaos. Okay, here are your basic and advanced skills. So the number one question I always get when people look at this is, hey, how come during character creation my skill is not listed in the sheet? It's because it's probably an advanced skill and you need to write it down on the side here. So you can see that all these skills are governed by a stat, which is cognizant with your characteristics up here. So what happens is you key in whatever stat this is. So for example, art. Your stat is dexterity. My stat in dexterity is 33, so I put in 33 here. Your advances, usually it's tied to like your class, your career choice, and maybe some of your species as well. So you may have extra points there that you can put in, and then as you can see, for example, charm, my base is 33, but I have 3 advances in charm, so my total is 36. And I have to roll 36 or under to pass the check. Yeah, some of them, like, there are brackets. Okay, if they have brackets on them, you need to check the rulebook for under these specific skills and pick one of those skills. You can't just add. It's not a bracket for you to add whatever you want. You could, but I would suggest sticking to something that makes sense within the universe, or better yet, it's already in the rulebook, so you can just use it. For example, the first time I created an art character, I think my art skill was like finger painting or something, which is obviously not one of the skills in the rulebook, but it was fun either way. I think Warhammer Fantasy, at the end of the day, is a very, very environmentally driven game and very lore driven game. So you want to respect those boundaries and respect what the setting is trying to tell, the story the setting is trying to tell. Even for your advanced skills as well, at least for this, this form fillable character sheet, you can choose the stat, which is tied to it. I refer to your book for the exact stat, your rulebook. Okay, then your talents are listed here. So for a lot of talents, it depends. So for some talents, let me get rid of this. Okay, so for some talents, they might be passive, so they're always on, and there are some talents that only occur during combat, etc., etc. For this particular character, she has a lot of passive ones. All these are actually passive. Let me check if another character has something different. Yeah, these talents are also mostly, passive. This one may be a little bit different. Prey lets you skill check to cast. Oh wait, Prey is a skill check. But yeah, it's pretty obvious once you read the talents whether it's only applicable in combat or certain situations, or if it's just a passive. Okay, next page of your character sheet is where all your weapons are. So your range and reach, I think honestly, if your GM is playing a very tactical game, then it matters. But for the games I run, it really doesn't matter. We'll just use common sense. If you are, if like goblins on a cliff, obviously you can hit this goblin with a quarterstaff while you're on the ground. That kind of thing. I usually defer to the fiction of the game, but some of you may be more comfortable with being very specific about your range and reach and all that kind of stuff, and I'll leave that to you and your GM. Your to hit. So I don't think this is actually in the official character sheet, but I think this is actually a very good addition. Basically, it tells you like, hey, you need to roll this or under to hit with this weapon, and some of them are different. Dot gusts for all of these are spells, which I'll get into later. Usually, these are also not listed under a combat section in the official character sheet, but that's why I like to use this character sheet, because it's pretty well organized in a way and easy for me to talk through to my players. Okay, the other thing also is damage. So for damage, usually your weapon has a standard amount of damage. For example, I believe, yeah. So for example, a dagger might have has a base damage of 2, and then you add your strength bonus as well, which is 2 here. You can draw from here. That's why my dagger right now is 4 plus my success levels. Yeah. So to calculate damage, it's always base damage from the weapon itself, your strength bonus, as well as the success level of your strike. So yeah, keep that in mind. I summarized it here, so it's easier for my players to understand. Some weapons also have qualities. Do check out the consumer's guide. I think that's one of the... It's like the later half of the rule book where you can look up what qualities there are for each of these weapons. And I suggest you write them down as well, because they can be quite overwhelming. Most of these qualities are passive as well, so do take note of that. You don't really need to have any currency to activate any of these. They are just there. Okay, let's talk about magic now. Magic requires you to have the talent Petty Magic. Yeah, there's a higher level one as well. I think it's something like Arcane Law. Yeah, I think it's Arcane Law, and you have to choose a specific Arcane Law as well. You can't just cast any kind of spell unless you're an elf. If you are, then congratulations, you can cast whatever you want. Mostly. Okay. Petty Magic is basically, in D&D terms, these are all your cantrips. There is a list of cantrips in the book. Do check it out. But I've picked 4 cantrips here, because this lady's, I believe her willpower bonus is 4. Yes, correct. So again, willpower bonus is your tens number. So my willpower bonus starting from weapon skill is 2, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 4, 3. Okay? Yeah. And yeah, basically what you just need to do for cantrips is you roll under and you immediately cast, because the casting number for each of it for cantrips is always 0. So you just need to pass your thing. To cast a spell, you need to meet that spell's casting number. So if the casting number is 4, you need 4 success levels. Just thinking about it, it's probably difficult to get 4 success levels from just one roll. So what happens usually is most magic users have a skill called channeling. Channeling, okay, there are updated rules for channeling. It didn't really used to work this way, but the rules I'm using for channeling right now are from Archives of the Empire. So it's the one after, I believe, Archives of the Empire 3. It's the one after Winds of Magic. So there were some updated skills some updated rules for spellcasting, and then they updated it again. Basically, what happens now is you don't need to choose a spell before you channel. So let's say I'm being attacked by like 5 goblins or something, and I know I want to cast a spell. I don't know what spell I want to cast yet. It depends on how well my friends are assisting me. I can just choose to channel for the turn. What happens is I roll to channel. So for me, 50% or under, I pass. Sorry, 50 or under, I pass. So assuming I'm successful, I immediately add my willpower bonus to my banked SL. So for next turn, when I cast my spell, I immediately already have 5 banked. 5 success levels banked. So if my casting number is 4, I can immediately cast it with 1 to spare. And usually, depending on the spell, you might have additional things you can do with these additional success levels as well. Yep. So I believe in the very first iteration of channeling, you added the success levels of your channeling skill to the SLs that you have banked. Unfortunately, that would mean that every time you channel, and if you failed that channel, you just wasted your turn, which is the case here as well. Even if you were successful at that channeling, sometimes you're only banking like 1 or 2. And some of these channeled spells, their casting numbers are quite high. It was almost never worth it to take those spells. But now, since it's tight, you get a flat SL bonus based on your willpower bonus. So my channel, I would get a +4, not a +5. So it's based on your willpower bonus. I will get 4 SL, not 5. Banked. Anyway, it's better this way, and it allows magic casters to have some more consistency and ability to cast spells and not waste their turns doing nothing. Okay, that's that. Armor and injury, she doesn't have any. So basically, sometimes your AP is like your armor points, basically. And depending on the amount of armor you have, you minus that amount of damage that is dealt to you. So in the game, actually, I think I scroll down a bit here. Yep. So in the game, actually, depending on your rolls or my rolls when I roll for my NPCs, there's a hit table here. So if I roll 45, I'm hitting your body. If I'm rolling 80, it hits your left leg, blah, blah, blah. This is, in theory, fun, but in practice, I feel that it slows down the game because there's so many tables to check and everything. And it's not great. Unless you're using something like Foundry, which automates all these things. Otherwise, what I usually do is just do simple. There's a rule in the book called simple armor. So basically, if you're wearing leather armor, it's just 1 AP all around. If you're wearing metal, it's 2 AP, and if you're wearing plate, it's 3. That's about it. And it's like, generally it says, I don't want my players to cheat the system and say, oh, I just spent like enough gold to get like a plate, knee guard or something, and then suddenly I have 3 AP all around my body. Obviously, this, again, I want to heavily emphasize, this game is not a game for your min-maxing or your combat, what do you call that? What's the word D&D players love to use? Optimization. It is not. You play this game for flavor and you play this game for the setting. It's not a combat game to min-max. So it's really not the best if you come in from a min-max point of view and optimization point of view and pull these little tricks. I would say for sure that your AP will depend on what the majority of the armor on you is, rather than oh, I just get like a knee guard and suddenly I have 3 AP everywhere. Doesn't make sense. That's that. When you start the game, you don't get plate armor anyway. I think the most you would get is metal, which is like 2 AP, and I'll probably just give it to you. I'm not a monster. You will still get your AP. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Okay, your wounds, there is a formula for this. It's on the character sheet itself. This one automatically calculates for you. And I've already gone through this in character creation as well, so do check that video out if you have any questions about it. If your wounds go down to 0, you can actually use, I believe, Fate. Is it Fate? Yeah, so Fate as a currency to say, I don't die, but I'm taken out of the scene for a while, but miraculously survive. Yeah. Hardy. Hardy is also a talent. Basically, it gives you more wounds, and depending on how many levels you take in Hardy, you can get some of this stuff as well. Halfling, if you're not Halfling, don't check this box. I believe there's some implication on your wounds also. Injuries. Sometimes when you get critical wounds and stuff like that, you might get injuries. Those usually have effects on your stats. Do keep that in mind. Trappings. These are pretty simple. If you're ever concerned or curious about what any of these trappings actually do, check them out in the consumer's guide. There's like a section in the book that lists all the items and what they actually do. Your wealth conversion rate is here, so do take a look. It's a little bit different, so don't assume. Encumbrance, most of the time I don't really focus so much on this, especially if we're doing one-shots. But if we're doing a campaign, then yes, I do encourage you to make use of the encumbrance rules and be careful not to be carrying too much stuff. Strong back and sturdy are talents as well that let you carry more stuff or endure more punishment while carrying more stuff. And then there's a section here to put in your experience points too. And that's basically your character sheet. Cool? Cool. Okay. Dice manipulation I'm not going to go through because again I've already covered that in character creation. Okay, what can you do in combat? So in general, what you can do is one movement and one action. That's about it. And these are all the things that you can do. Assess the situation lets you on make a relevant skill test. On a success, gain 2 advantage. On a success with 6 or more SL, gain 3 advantage. Okay, I guess it's time for me to talk about advantage as well. It works differently from D&D, very differently. You don't get to roll extra dice. Advantage is basically a currency that is shared with the whole group. So it's at this point I should also say that the advantage rules I'm using is the updated advantage rules from Up in Arms, the accompanying rules book, the expansion rules book from Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So in the original Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, each advantage is tied individually to each character, and basically what you could do was stack like 1,000 advantage and never miss, because each advantage you had was a +10 to hit, and it really snowballed. And it made certain combat scenarios very easy or overwhelming for you if the enemies were to strike first, etc. That was bad. We don't do that anymore. So now we use Up in Arms rules, which to me, I like it more because it gives more flexibility to players. There's more things for them to do with advantage as well, and it makes it more of a team effort because it's not tied to an individual player. It's tied to your group as a whole. It gives like non-combat characters things to do during combat, which is to gain advantage for the group. So attack is your very standard one. In this game, a lot of the skill checks are opposed checks. Opposed checks basically mean you roll as a player and GM rolls. Whoever rolls with a better success level wins that roll, that skill check. So there are a lot of times during combat or whatever, I have some players be like, fail their roll, their attack, for example, and then they're like, oh, very sad. Oh, DM, I just miss. But me, as a DM, I'm a terrible dice roller person, whatever you call that. That I always roll like 90 something or like super high numbers. So sometimes even when my players fail, I feel worse, and their attack actually goes through and they get to deal damage. So that's always very exciting for them. Yeah. So keep that in mind. It's not the end of the world. If you miss your attack, I may miss too. I may miss worse than you. And if you're wondering what a success level is, it is how well you succeed on your roll. So just to give you an example, let's say weapon skill, I need to roll a, let's see, Is it different for... Okay, let's say my quarterstaff, right? I need to roll 34 to hit. I roll I roll like 12, for example. How many success levels is that? That's 2 success levels, because 3 minus... We only look at the tens number again. So 34 minus... So 30 minus 10, which is 2. 2 success levels. Very easy, right? So ignore the second number. So whether it's 11, 12, 86, whatever the hell it is, ignore the second number. You always just do first number minus this. Same thing, if I roll 86 and my hit to hit is 34, my success level is minus 5. So unless me as a GM, I roll minus 6, your attack is going to miss. And then you apply your damage. Okay, let's humor this for a second. You roll 86, I roll 99, and that is basically a crit fail for me. You still attack, yes, but you are rolling at a minus 5 success level. So you're doing 6 plus minus 5. You only deal 1 damage. So that's how it works. Yeah. So success levels, I hope we understand that. Charge lets you gain a +10 for your first hit when you run towards your opponent. Yeah, this is basically a super action. You run and you hit. Cloud shots. Let's say you want to attack a specific part of the body, or you want to disarm the person or whatever. It's minus 20 to your check, but you get to make that check. And obviously, if you're successful, then the GM will rule, okay, that guy drops his thing or whatever, drops his whip or whatever. You can flee as well. Sometimes most of the time, this is caused by your psychological effects like terror and stuff like that. And there are certain bonuses to be gained or lost here. Please take a look. Running lets you add more movement and stuff like that. Again, for my games, I don't really use this because distance for me is like arbitrary. You can hit someone across the tavern. Yes, you can move and hit someone across the tavern. Yes, you can. I don't count squares. Yeah, and you can also choose to defend. Your special abilities, these are, again, your talents and stuff like that. Some talents are only active during combat, so do take a look. And 2-weapon fighting, if you're hitting with your second weapon, it's... Sorry, not your second weapon, but if you're attacking with a weapon that is on your offhand, it's minus 20 to hit. And that's like it. Okay, so advantage. These are all the things you can do at advantage here. Lots of cool stuff to do here. So one of the reasons why I like the combat system more in this game is because non-combat characters can help you gain advantage and let you do all these things as well that have tactical advantages to what you're trying to do. You can even get additional actions to attack even more, so you can do attack 2-3 times if you want to. You can use advantages to get additional effort, so you gain +10 bonuses to your rolls and stuff like that. But advantages are tied to combat, so you don't really just use any of these willy-nilly. These are some of the ways you can use it, gain advantage. So narrative reasons, usually at the start of the combat scenario, we'll take a survey of the battlefield, for example. Are you outnumbered? What's your position? Do you have the high ground? Do you have the low ground? Etc. And we'll award advantage to the PCs and the NPCs as well. And then we work it up from there. Assess the situation. So for example, let's say the battle is not going too well and your artist character needs to do something. I can assess the situation and maybe I try and find a less crowded path out of here to escape. That could be one thing. Or let's say I'm a dwarf and we're fighting in a cave. I could be like, oh, okay, I'm going to assess the situation and find a weak wall somewhere where I could strike it and like cause an avalanche or something like that to hit whatever is bugging my friends. I'll allow that. So you can use assess the situation to do that as well. Succeed on an opposed test. So when you attack somebody and you win, you gain 1. When you dodge, whatever. Surprise. When you attacked a opponent that doesn't know you're there, you gain advantage as well. And then also another thing to apply during combat is the combat chart. So again, this is a guideline, not a word of law. Generally, all of these are usually more or less self-explanatory and common sense. Obviously, if you're outnumbered, you are less favored. So you have a minus to hit. And if a target is large, then you have a better chance of hitting that and you get a bonus to hit. So what I would recommend players do is to just keep this chart in hand. Most of these bonuses will be applied by the GM, naturally, but I would recommend playing the narrative again. I know the rules are quite tactical here, but we want to keep the combat moving at a reasonable pace. And if you're staring at sheets all the time and like trying to game the system, it just bogs down combat, which is not generally a fun thing to do. But yeah, I would say just read through this list, just keep them in mind, and work towards getting your bonuses from the combat charts. But, don't rely on it as like word of law. I must refer to this chart every single round in combat. Again, like I mentioned, a lot of these are common sense things that would be granted quote unquote advantage for in D5E. It's safe to say that, hey, mentally speaking, if I do this, I should have some kind of bonus. Rather than, oh, I'm going to do this because there is a bonus. What will your character do if it's outnumbered? Maybe he would get like on the high ground to equalize things, etc. Okay, enough with combat. I think we've covered most of the things we need to know for combat. Okay, let's talk about healing in this game. There are multiple ways to heal. Some of them require items such as bandages, healing draughts, and poultices. But other than these, there are two main ways that you heal your wounds. Number one is your heal skill. So, as you can tell, heal skill is a advanced skill. It's not anywhere here. You need to be in the correct career and have heal. I believe it's an intelligence-based stat. Basically, if you pass your heal skill test, you heal intelligence bonus plus the success level. So the way heal works, right? If you roll badly for a heal, you might actually do more damage. So for example, if my SL for my heal check was like -8 or something, and my bonus is only 3, I actually deal 5 damage to somebody. It's pretty funny when it happens, but yeah, fun fact. Okay, if you don't have the heal skill, the only way you can heal is quote-unquote short rest. I actually shouldn't call this short rest because there is no short rest in this game. The healing takes place during what players would consider a long rest, and you don't heal all your health points as well. After your rest, which must be a nice rest, like a good long rest of a good night of sleep, you take an endurance test and you heal your toughness bonus plus the success levels you got from that test. Then for each subsequent day, you heal your toughness bonus wounds. You must sleep to gain this benefit. No sit down for 10 minutes, roll my hit dice and get back up. This game does not work like that. Common conditions as well. These are some of the conditions that you may be targeted by, that you may be suffering from. Pretty common ones. So I'll leave them here. Unconscious. Okay, so when you reach 0 HP, all melee hits against you are at max SL and anywhere your opponent wants to hit. So if I want to hit the hit, I hit the hit. If you're unconscious, you gain a critical wound immediately. All hits are equal to your critical wound. All hits when you're unconscious result with critical wounds. Alright. And yeah, I think that is about it for all the things that you need to know in terms of combat. Okay, another question you're probably asking me at this point now is, how do I die in this game? If you're unconscious, do you mean you're dead? No, it doesn't mean you're dead. You're just down again. I already talked about what unconscious as a condition does. But basically, if your number of critical wounds you have exceed your toughness bonus, then you die. So if you have a very high toughness bonus, I would have to deal a lot of critical wounds before I down you. But do keep in mind that all melee hits on you SL, and they are all any hit when you're unconscious, and they will hit critical wounds. Okay. Let's move on to magic. We have covered a little bit about magic already. Basically, the idea is that you need to hit a casting number before you are able to cast a spell. First, for a high CN spell, first you make a channeling test. If your channeling test pass, you add your willpower bonus to your banked SL, and next turn you can use a language magic test. If you're successful, and the SLs for that test meet the casting number plus the ones you have banked from your channeling spell, then the spell is cast. So there are critical casting and fumbling rules as well. I've laid that out here to take a look. And yeah, there's concentration as well. So when channeling, you must pass a -20 test if you're distracted by loud noises, etc., etc. Yeah. If you fail, you lose all SL and roll a minor miscast table. Dispelling basically is counterspell, doesn't really use any spell slots or whatever. Basically, it's just you get to do this once per turn and make a contest with whoever's casting a spell. If you win, the spell's counted. If you lose, if you lose, the spell just goes through. Obviously, I would rule that you can't use Dispel when you're channeling a spell. Okay, for religion, similar to casting spells again. You make a skill check, a pray test, and every 2 SL grants you additional range, targets, and further duration. If you fumble, then you roll the Wrath of Gods table, which is the miscast table for holy characters. For holy characters, you have a mechanic called Sin and Wrath. When you incur sin points by going against your teachings or the God's will, so if you murder people, and as somebody from Church of Sigma or whatever, murder like non-chaos people, you get corruption, you take sin points and stuff like that. And basically, every sin point you roll increases your chances of rolling on the Wrath of Gods table. There are some rules for corruption here as well that I've already spoken about, but these are some examples of how you can gain corruption, what can expose you to corruption, and the corruption you are going to gain if you meet any of these things. And yeah, character creation and character advancement, I've talked about it already in my previous video. But in general, this is the basics of how to play this game. I hope you guys have learned something. Generally, the combat rules don't really come into play until obviously combat. And this is not a combat game, so 90% of the time you won't be using these rules. But yeah, I hope you learned something today, and thank you for watching the show, and I'll see you at the game sometime. Meanwhile, subscribe, check out our website altrpgclub.com to sign up for more games, etc. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube's, all that stuff, and we'll see you soon. Bye!